The rain was relentless, hammering the roof of the old Tacoma house like it wanted to break through. I was 17, curled up on my bed, heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. My stepdad, Greg, had just found the letter I wrote to Jamal, my first crush, and the words I'd poured out in secret were now a weapon in his hands. "You think this is okay?" Greg's voice boomed through the walls, his silhouette looming in the doorway. His broad shoulders filled the frame, his face a mask of disgust. "You're not bringing that filth into my house, Marcus." I froze, the letter trembling in his fist. My mom stood behind him, her eyes darting between us, silent but pleading. I wanted to scream that I wasn't wrong, that loving Jamal wasn't a sin, but fear choked me. "Pack your stuff," Greg said, his voice cold as the rain outside. "You're out by morning." That night, I shoved clothes into a duffel bag, my hands shaking. Tacoma, the only home I'd known, felt like it was spitting me out. Mom slipped me $50 and a whispered, "I'm sorry," before Greg's glare silenced her. By dawn, I was on a bus to Seattle, a city I'd only seen in postcards, with no plan and a heart full of rage. Seattle was a shock of noise and color. The Pike Place market buzzed with vendors hawking fish and flowers, but I was too numb to care. I found a shelter on First Avenue, a grimy place with flickering lights and too many stories like mine. There, I met Diego, a 19-year-old with a sharp laugh and eyes that seemed to see right through me. He was Latino, raised in foster homes across Oregon, and had a way of making the world feel less heavy. "You got kicked out too?" he asked one night, passing me a stale donut from the shelter's kitchen. His voice was soft, but there was a fire in it, like he'd fought battles I could only imagine. "Yeah," I said, staring at the floor. "My stepdad. He found a letter." Diego nodded, no judgment, just understanding. "Mine was my aunt. Said I was confused. Threw me out when I was 16. He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine. "But you're here now. You're tougher than you think." His words stuck with me, a lifeline in the chaos. Over the next few weeks, Diego became my anchor. We'd wander Seattle's streets, sharing stories under the neon glow of dive bars we were too young to enter. He told me about his dream to be a chef, to open a food truck serving tacos that'd make people cry with joy. I told him about my love for poetry, how words were the only way I could make sense of the pain. One night, under the Fremont Bridge, Diego kissed me. It was quick, tentative, like he was testing the waters. My heart raced, not from fear this time, but from something alive and new. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered. And for the first time since Greg's ultimatum, I believed it. But survival wasn't easy. The shelter had a 3-month limit, and jobs for 2 queer kids with no diplomas were scarce. We scraped by, washing dishes at a greasy diner, splitting rent on a closet-sized room in Capitol Hill. The city was freedom, but it was also brutal. Every rejection letter, every sideways glance from strangers, reminded me of Greg's voice. "You're not enough." One day, I found Diego crying in our tiny bathroom, holding a letter from his estranged sister. She tracked him down, begging him to come back to Portland, promising things would be different. "I can't go," he said, voice breaking. "She doesn't get it. She doesn't get me." I held him, feeling his pain mirror mine. "Then we stay here," I said. "We build our own family." And we did, piece by piece. We found a queer youth group, a ragtag crew of misfits who became our lifeline. There was Lynn, a Vietnamese trans girl with a wicked sense of humor, and Sam, a non-binary artist who painted murals that stopped traffic. They taught us how to fight for ourselves, how to love without shame. but Greg's shadow lingered. I'd see his face in nightmares, hear his voice in the quiet moments. I wrote poems about him, about the father figure who'd chosen hate over love. Diego would read them, his eyes soft, and say, "You're turning pain into something beautiful, Marcus. That's power." By the time I turned 20, Diego and I had saved enough to move into a slightly less awful apartment. It was small, with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was ours. We'd cook together, his tacos filling the air with spice, my laughter filling the gaps. We were building something, not just surviving. But deep down, I wondered if I'd ever heal from the wound Greg left, or if I'd always be the kid he threw away. Life in Seattle had a rhythm, a pulse that Diego and I learned to dance to. By 21, I was working as a barista in a cozy Belltown cafe, scribbling poetry on napkins during breaks. Diego had landed a gig at a food truck, his hands flying as he chopped onions and dreamed of his own someday. We were scraping by, but we were happy, mostly. One rainy afternoon, a customer left a newspaper on the counter, and I saw it. A photo of my mom at a Tacoma charity event, smiling next to Greg. The caption called them local heroes for funding a community center. My stomach twisted. Heroes? The man who'd kicked me out was being celebrated, while I was still piecing myself back together. I showed Diego the article that night, my voice shaking. "He doesn't get to be the good guy," I said, crumpling the paper. Diego pulled me close, his warmth steadying me. "He's not your story anymore, Marcus," he said. "You are." But the article reopened old wounds. I started having nightmares again, Greg's voice, my mom's silence, the cold bus ride to nowhere. Diego noticed the shadows under my eyes, the way I'd flinch at loud voices. He suggested I talk to someone, a counselor at the queer youth center. I resisted at first. Talking felt like admitting I was broken, but Diego's quiet persistence won me over. The counselor, a kind-eyed woman named Dr. Rivera, helped me unpack the anger I'd carried since 17. "You're not just surviving, Marcus," she said. "You're thriving, even if it doesn't always feel like it." She encouraged me to keep writing, to share my poetry at open mics. The first time I read at a Capitol Hill bar, my knees shook, but the crowd's applause felt like a hug from the universe. Diego was there, cheering loudest, his grin lighting up the room. Afterward, he pulled me into a kiss under a street lamp, the Seattle drizzle haloing us. "You're a star," he said, and I almost believed him, but the high didn't last. A week later, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was small, hesitant, like she was afraid I'd hang up. "Marcus, I miss you," she said. "Can we meet?" My heart lurched. I wanted to say yes, to run to her, but Greg's face flashed in my mind. "Is he coming?" I asked. She paused, then said, "No, just me." We met at a diner in Tacoma, a neutral ground. She looked older, her eyes heavy with guilt. "I should have fought for you," she said, tears spilling. I was scared. Greg, he's not a bad man, but he was wrong. So wrong. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was grief. I told her about Diego, about my life in Seattle. She listened, her hands trembling around her coffee mug. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, and it broke me. I didn't tell Diego about the meeting right away. Part of me felt guilty, like I was betraying the family we'd built by even talking to her. But when I finally did, he just held me. "You don't have to choose, Marcus," he said. "You can love her and still be you." That year, Diego's food truck dream started taking shape. He saved every penny, sketching menus on scraps of paper. I helped him brainstorm names. Taco Libre was our favorite, We'd lie in bed, dreaming of a future where he'd cook and I'd write. Our lives intertwined like the vines outside our window, but the world wasn't always kind to our dreams. One night, a group of drunk guys harassed us outside a bar, shouting slurs that cut deeper than I'd admit. Diego stood tall, his jaw set, but I saw the fear in his eyes. We got home shaken, holding each other until dawn. "We're stronger than them," Diego whispered, but I wondered if strength would ever be enough. By 22, I was performing poetry regularly, my words finding a small but loyal audience. A local press offered to publish a chapbook of my work, a dream I never thought possible. Diego threw a party to celebrate, our tiny apartment packed with friends. Lynn made a glittery banner, and Sam painted a mural on our wall, a vibrant heart with our initials. It felt like we'd won, like the world couldn't touch us. But then my mom called again. "Greg wants to talk," she said. My heart stopped. "He's changed, Marcus. Please, just hear him out." I hung up, my hands shaking. Diego found me staring at the wall, lost in memories of that rainy night 5 years ago. "You don't owe him anything," he said, his voice fierce. "But if you want to face him, I'll be right there." I didn't know what I wanted. Part of me wanted to scream at Greg, to make him feel the pain he'd caused. Part of me was terrified he'd break me again. But Diego's hand in mine gave me courage. Maybe it was time to confront the past. The idea of facing Greg haunted me for weeks. I'd wake up sweating, his voice echoing in my dreams. "You're not bringing that filth into my house." Diego was patient, never pushing, but I could see the worry in his eyes when I'd zone out, lost in memories. Finally, I agreed to meet Greg, but only on my terms, neutral ground, no surprises, and Diego by my side. We chose a quiet park in Seattle, near Lake Washington, where the cherry blossoms were in full bloom. I was 23 now, taller, stronger, but still felt like that scared kid from Tacoma. Diego held my hand as we walked, his presence a shield against the panic rising in my chest. "You've got this," he said, squeezing my fingers. "You're not that kid anymore." Greg arrived alone, his broad frame softened by age. His hair was grayer, his eyes tired. He looked at me, then at Diego, and for a moment I thought he'd bolt. But he stayed, sitting across from us on a picnic bench, his hands clasped tight. "Marcus," he started, his voice low. "I don't know where to begin." "Then start with sorry," I snapped, surprising myself. Diego's thumb brushed my knuckles, grounding me. Greg flinched, but he nodded. "I'm sorry," he said, the words heavy. "I was wrong. I was scared, angry, ignorant. I didn't understand you, and I let that ruin everything." His eyes met mine, and I saw something new, regret, raw and unfiltered. "I can't undo what I did, but I want to try to make it right." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him how his words had shattered me, how I'd spent years rebuilding myself. But another part saw a man who looked broken, like he'd been carrying his own ghosts. Diego spoke up, his voice steady. "What does making it right mean to you, Greg? Because Marcus has built a life without you." Greg's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "I want to know you, Marcus. Your mom, she's been showing me your poetry. It's beautiful. I didn't know you had that in you." He paused, his voice cracking. "I want to be part of your life if you'll let me." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think it's that easy? You threw me out, Greg. I was 17. My voice broke, and Diego's arms slid around my shoulders. Greg's face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw him as human, not the monster of my nightmares. The conversation didn't fix everything. Couldn't. But it was a start. Greg promised to keep trying, to learn, to listen. I didn't trust him yet, but I agreed to meet again. As we walked away, Diego pulled me close. "You were so brave," he said, kissing my forehead. "I'm so proud of you." Life moved forward. Diego's food truck, Taco Libre, became a reality, parked near Pike Place, serving tacos that drew crowds. I'd help on weekends, handing out napkins and watching him shine. My poetry chapbook sold out its first run, and I started teaching workshops at the youth center, helping kids like me find their voice. Our chosen family, Lynn, Sam, and others, grew tighter, our bond unbreakable. But Greg's reappearance stirred something in me. I started writing about forgiveness, about what it meant to let go without forgetting. My poems grew sharper, more honest, and audiences noticed. A local theater group asked to adapt one into a performance, a surreal moment that left me reeling. Diego threw another party, our apartment bursting with love and laughter. Yet doubts lingered. Greg kept reaching out, sending awkward texts about my work, asking to meet again. My mom joined him sometimes, her presence a bridge between us. Each meeting chipped away at my anger, but trust was harder to rebuild. Diego was my rock, reminding me I didn't have to rush, that healing wasn't a straight line. One night, after a poetry reading, a stranger approached me. She was a black woman in her 40s, her eyes warm. "Your words, they made me think of my son," she said. "He's gay, and I didn't handle it well at first. I'm trying now because of you." Her words hit me hard, a reminder that my story wasn't just mine. It was a lifeline for others. Diego and I started planning a future beyond Seattle. He dreamed of taking Taco Libre on the road, maybe to Portland or San Francisco. I wanted to write a full collection, maybe even a memoir. We'd talk for hours, sprawled on our couch, imagining a life where we could be unapologetically us. But the past wasn't done with us yet. At 24, life felt like a tightrope. Diego and I were thriving. His food truck was a local hit, my poetry workshops were packed, and our apartment was a haven of warmth. But Greg's attempts to reconnect kept pulling me back to that rainy night in Tacoma. Each text, each meeting, was a test of how much I could forgive. One spring day, Greg asked me to meet him at the community center he and my mom had funded. I hesitated, but Diego encouraged me. "Go see what he's got to say," he said, his eyes steady. "You're strong enough to handle it." So I went, alone this time, my heart a tangle of hope and fear. The community center was bright, filled with kids painting murals and playing basketball. Greg greeted me, his smile nervous. "This place is for kids who don't have anywhere else to go," he said. "Like you did." His voice was soft, almost ashamed. He led me to a small room with a plaque that read, "Marcus Carter Poetry Corner." My breath caught. "I read your chapbook," Greg said, his hands in his pockets. "Your mom kept pushing me to understand. I didn't know how much I hurt you. This room, it's for kids to write, to heal like you did." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm trying." I stood there, speechless, my name on the wall a surreal weight. Part of me wanted to hug him, part wanted to run. "Why now?" I finally asked. "Why after all this time?" "Because I was wrong," he said simply. "And I see you now, Marcus, the man you've become." His voice broke, and I saw tears in his eyes. Greg, the man who'd once been my monster, crying for me. I didn't forgive him that day, but I felt something shift, like a crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. When I told Diego, he listened quietly, then said, "He's trying, Marcus. That's more than most do. We sat in silence, his hand in mine, the weight of the moment settling between us. That summer, Diego's food truck got a feature in a local magazine, calling Taco Libre Seattle's soul food. We celebrated with our chosen family, dancing in our tiny living room to Lynn's terrible playlist. But the high came with a low. Diego got a call from his sister in Portland, saying their mom was sick. He hadn't seen her in years, not since she'd sided with his aunt's rejection. "I don't know if I can face her," he told me, his voice small. I held him, remembering my own fear with Greg. "You don't have to go alone," I said. "I'll be there." So we drove to Portland, the road trip a mix of laughter and dread. Diego's mom was frail, her eyes softening when she saw him. "I messed up, Mijo," she whispered. "I should have loved you better." Diego cried, and I held his hand, feeling the weight of his pain. They talked for hours, rebuilding something fragile but real. On the drive back, Diego was quiet, but his hand never left mine. "Thank you," he said finally, "for being my home." Back in Seattle, my poetry took on new depth, weaving in themes of reconciliation and resilience. My workshops grew, drawing kids from all over the city, queer, straight, lost, found. I saw myself in their eyes, the same hunger for acceptance I'd felt at 17. One kid, a shy 15-year-old named Jamal, reminded me so much of my first crush that I nearly cried reading his poems. Greg kept showing up, small gestures at first, sending books for the poetry corner, attending my readings. My mom came too, her pride a quiet glow. Each step felt like a risk, but Diego's belief in me made it possible. "You're rewriting your story," he said one night, his voice warm. "And it's beautiful." By fall, Diego and I were planning a bigger move. Maybe California, where the sun would warm our bones and Taco Libre could grow. We'd lie awake, dreaming of a house with a garden, a place where our love could root deep. But life had one more surprise waiting, one that would change everything. It was a crisp October morning when Greg called, his voice urgent. "Marcus, I need you to come to Tacoma. It's important." My gut twisted, but something in his tone, vulnerable, almost desperate, made me agree. Diego offered to come, but I felt this was something I had to face alone. The community center was packed when I arrived, kids and parents milling around for an open house. Greg met me at the entrance, his face a mix of nerves and determination. "I want you to see something," he said, leading me to the poetry corner. The room was filled with teenagers, their notebooks open, reading poems to each other. On the wall was a new mural, painted by Sam, depicting a phoenix rising from a stormy sea, with my words woven into the waves. "You are enough." "This is because of you," Greg said, his voice thick. "These kids, they're here because you showed me what courage looks like." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a deed, a small building in Seattle donated to start a youth arts program in my name. "I know I can't fix the past," he said, "but I want to build something with you, if you'll let me." I stood there, the weight of his gesture crashing over me. This wasn't just an apology, it was a commitment, a promise to do better. Tears stung my eyes, and for the first time, I saw Greg not as my stepdad, but as a man trying to right his wrongs. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I said, my voice shaking, "but I'm willing to try." When I got home, Diego was waiting, his eyes searching mine. I told him everything, the words spilling out. He pulled me into a hug, his laughter warm against my ear. "You're building something bigger than pain, Marcus," he said. "You're changing lives." The next year was a whirlwind. The arts program launched, a haven for queer kids and anyone who felt lost. I ran poetry workshops, Diego taught cooking classes, and our friends pitched in, Lynn with her humor, Sam with their art. Greg showed up not as a savior, but as a quiet supporter, learning from the kids as much as they learned from him. Diego's Taco Libre expanded, a second truck rolling out in Portland. My memoir, Rain to Roots, hit shelves, dedicated to Diego and the family we'd built. At the launch party, Greg and my mom stood in the crowd, clapping with tears in their eyes. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One evening, under the cherry blossoms by Lake Washington, Diego and I sat on our favorite bench. The sunset painted the sky in pinks and golds, and he took my hand, his eyes soft. "We made it, Marcus," he said. "Through all of it." I leaned into him, feeling the weight of our journey, pain, love, and everything in between. The world wasn't fixed. Hate still lingered, in slurs shouted from passing cars, in the fear that sometimes woke us at night. But we had each other, our chosen family, and a purpose bigger than ourselves. Greg's change wasn't the end of my story. It was a chapter, one that showed me healing was possible, even when it hurt. As the stars came out, I whispered a line from my latest poem, "Love is the root that grows through stone." Diego smiled, his hand warm in mine, and I knew we'd keep growing, no matter what came next.